Like, what was the urgency behind you needing the registry and pushing forward?
So if I give a little bit of background, right? So
Yeah.
I work so my name is Manu, work in this Schneider Electric, which
Hmm.
is a global energy industrial technology company, and we are into electricity, from production to distribution to supply, including in data center, infrastructure, buildings, everywhere, right? So um, we have deployed GitHub Copilot to our developers globally. So we have around 5 to 6,000 developers globally in different offices. So as and when this news of MCP has emerged, a lot of people were asking us, we also want to use MCP, right? So we want to use with that purpose. We see these videos. This is really useful. This is going to make us very productive. So this request came, and also I was tracking the news as well as part of my exploration and things like that. So we have started talking to GitHub at this point. Okay, so we want to use it. How do we approach? So initially in the product lifecycle, they have the lifecycle of releases. So they make the initial features as preview, like all the features that they enable, and then they keep it for a few months, and then like it makes the go live, right? And contractually, like we could not do we can't do it when it's a preview, so we need to wait for it to kind of go live. So the need really came from we and understanding like what is the technologies there, and also people are requesting to use. But we were very clear that we don't want to allow like everything, right? All MCP servers, because there is a very high possibility of the supply chain attack, because the MCPs will really impact it sits in your IDE, and it can really influence the LLM to inject some code which is maybe not safe and secure, right? So that is what kind of felt as, okay, we need to do it, um, in a secure way. So this was the starting point of the thought process, that we want to do it in a secure way.
And and for distribution, I mean, you mentioned teams are using Copilot. They've adopted Copilot across the company, and then
Yeah.
GitHub being the registry and kind of being a distribution mechanism. Does that reach 100% of teams? Are there still teams that need other are using Office 365 because they're business stakeholders, or like how is that coverage when it comes to distribution working out?
So the way that we do the GitHub Copilot is specifically for developers, right? For the non-developers or the business folks, use what they call as the Office 365, the M365, what they call. So that's their kind of primary tool. Where I don't think they have given the MCP access at this stage. Like you can't like configure directly in that. For us, target was the developers, and registry was so registry is essentially an application which is again community built, open source available. It's a set of three URLs. So what happens? It's kind of a list, right? Okay, you allow this or don't allow this, right? That's a list. The actual package that gets downloaded, it sits in the internal JFrog, or it sits in a node registry. So it could be like your package registry could be different than an MCP registry, which is an allow list type of mechanism. It's essentially a JSON file. So yeah, so distribution was fairly okay, because if you add it to the registry, when the developers open the VS Code and they do the add the MCP in the extensions window, it shows up there. So it's fairly easy for them to see it and install it from there. But yeah, we had to create some guide extra to to configure if they need to put some tokens and all that was required.
Yeah, no, and then teams can choose what they want. They have the autonomy to be able to say, no, you're using this and this, and they can just, as long as it's on the list, they're cool.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So as long as it's on the list, we let them use whatever they want or not use, if they are concerned, like because they need to put their PAT tokens. We have so essentially our work was to create a policy around like which one we will allow, which one we won't allow, because obviously there are hundreds of it,
Mhm.
and scan the for the vulnerabilities of the packages what is coming up. If it's a vendor provided ones, then it's obviously much easier. But if it's a community version, then we need to have extra carefulness, because you need to check how much contribution is there and all that. So that was the checks that we have did, before we do it. Yeah,
Yeah, no kind of governance. That's what I was doing at
yeah,
Bloomberg was their API governance and
yeah,
which widened to the life cycle, which widened to, beyond just API governance. So how,
right, right.
what tools can people use, that kind of stuff. So makes a lot of sense. Um, I'm still getting a handle, even with a registry, like personally, like which, you know, context engineering of my world, like which layers am I layering on here? Which one? How are they competing? Like, do you personally like have any way that you manage like the context for you, what MCP servers you're using in your work? I mean, I find it challenging to do.
So what we have seen is, so obviously if you look at the developer workflow, right? So you start with Figma, which we have kind of recently enabled. Um, so you have that for your user experience. Then you have Atlassian MCP for your Jira, your Confluence. That's one. Then you have GitHub MCP where you can easily talk to
Yeah.
GitHub for your pull request commits. That one. So these are the main ones that we have, but we also have a lot of the utility ones. For example, Tableau, a lot of DB access you can do, those things. But primarily the wherever you have the developer workflow covered, so that is our first target that we want to do with respect to the registry.
Yeah, so having the everything you're going to need throughout the life cycle with GitOps,
Yep.
the Jira, the everything like that. Yeah, that reflects, I would say, a lot of we're working with a couple design partners right now to build gateway MCP. So you have like all of your, from an API governance standpoint, you used to, have a catalog, and before you build an
Yeah.
API, you go look in your catalog. But now, how do we inject? So, kind of IntelliSense in your Copilot you actually know what APIs because they're registered with the gateways and you're reusing paths and parameters
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff. So it's a that developer lifecycle is a pretty key one for a lot of
Yeah.
groups.
So the interesting point about APIs in the middle of all this is, for example, if AI were to use a lot of APIs and make a lot of calls, right? For example, if take Jira, for example, right? We haven't seen like how it's going to impact the overall performance of the APIs, right? Because if a human is using a screen, it's only will use a limited one. Because we have some use cases now, what people are doing is they have in their backlog some 300 issues, which is laying there forever, like they have not nobody has opened and see. Now, what people do is they ask GitHub Copilot, hey, it's my backlog. Go look at all 300 issues. Find me the duplicates, right?
Mhm.
Which is high priority, things like that. Now, you can imagine if you are a Jira administrator, this is a huge number of APIs that's going to come, right? Because all the people are going to try the same thing. So, I think it's going to very soon look at from the other angle, the API administration angle, like of the actual application which is in the receiving side, on how this is going to be kind of treated. I think that would be an interesting observation, to have.
Yeah, no, that's very much where that observability layer is where I want to be. Where what
Mhm.
we're building is trying to inject in that and understand what's that usage, what are the patterns, and then how can you adjust? How can you make sense and manage costs and manage risk and manage
Mhm.
PII and all that other compliance. So it's super critical, I think, to try to make sense of that. But we don't know what we don't know right now. So you kind of need that
Yeah,
observability and traceability in there to make sense of it all.
yeah.
Um,
That is true.
so why do you tell the story publicly of this? Like, I'm always curious. I mean, I have a blog called API Evangelist. I've been blogging about API stuff for 15 years, but I'm always
Mhm.
curious. Why do you blog? Why do you share this story?
So one of the things I realized is there is a lot of information about personal use, right? I mean, this if you see all the videos, it was okay. You can take it from Jira and do it, which was very like personal. So there was not a lot content on the enterprise. So for me, it took like around 2 to 3 weeks or maybe a month also to put some of the servers in. Like so, you have a process to add any server, and that was not a very straightforward process. So I realized a lot of vendors, they given a developer side of adding snapshot. Okay, this is the configuration you have to put in your VS Code, then it makes it available. They haven't made a lot of effort to say that, okay, if you have an an administrator, you are a registry
Yeah,
administrator. This is what you have to do,
yeah.
right? So this was a new thing that we had to figure out a lot. So that's where when we did the playwright, which was the first, which is a very simple MCP, there was no identity, etc. We thought, okay, let's write this, and like if somebody's finding useful, right, let them
Yeah.
find. Yeah, that
I,
was the thought process.
I like that. I love that. I mean, that's a big reason I share what I do with APIs is trying to
Mhm.
educate and, bring awareness to the masses and fill in the cracks where the vendors
Yeah,
or across the vendors where,
yeah.
where there's not knowledge. So that's cool.
Hmm.
Another area I'm curious your perspective on is so a lot of groups we're working with are on the same track that you're on, like the MCP registry, kind of governance, all of that, observability, traceability in there, logging. But where are you at with the whole MCP agent skills CLI kind of trade-off? Are you seeing anything interesting there, or do you have any opinions?
So we had a debate. I mean, in the developer community within, like there was somebody saying, MCP is dead and use CLI and all this.
Yeah.
And so I used to be a Stack Overflow contributor, like not very recently, but if it's 2013, 14, I used to, I used to be a Java developer when I was a developer, and Java Hibernate, like I used to be a top 1% contributor. So one of the things I like about Stack Overflow in their founding statement, you see, right? You don't debate whether Java is better or a .NET is better, right?
Mhm.
You use like that kind of question they don't promote, right? I mean, you tell what is the problem, what is the solution. So one of the things that I told people is that, see, there are multiple ways of doing things which is available, right? So you just find like what is useful for you and just use it, right? You don't need to debate and say that, oh, this is okay. You can say this is a good way, but different people will find, because I don't like in general CLIs, because I'm not a command line person. Like I like
Mhm.
IDEs a lot more. So I find the MCP in IDE much better to have a much control rather than like working in CLI. Because my view is that if you decide that developer needs to understand code to some extent before they commit, that's instead the policy of Schneider that, okay, you are committing, not the AI is committing, so you need to know. Then you need to at least read it once, right? I mean, otherwise, how do you know? I mean, you forget comprehending, but at least you should understand what function, what architecture. So an IDE is kind of much better way of looking at there. So that was the thought process. Like, okay, we enable everything like CLI everywhere, but it's up to people to use whatever they want to use is what the thing. And personally, I liked IDE, so I've used with Playwright with skills, and that is what we do. I don't use CLI a lot.
Yeah. No,
Mm.
I like that. I would say that reflects my the I'm not a CLI person. I'm an API person primarily,
Yeah.
but the you mentioned IDE, and so the kind of intersection of IDE and uh, CLI for some people, but IDE and Copilot for other people is I would say so I'm assuming you use VS Code. Is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
so
use VS
VS
Code.
Code
Yeah,
and Copilot and then that kind of GitHub apparatus, that's kind of the
yeah, yeah.
magic for you, magic formula, right?
Right, right. That's what we are. A lot of us are using that. That's what we are using. We have like around 5 to 10 people, percentage of people that were using CLI, maybe. We have like 50% folks on VS Code, and then all the other IDs, the remaining 50% is what the
Yeah.
general distribution that we see.
Yeah. No, and I think in the Git distribution, the MCP kind of distribution aspect works within a lot of the enterprises we're talking as far as getting the coverage they need. But then depending on the organization, how old it is, and sometimes there's IntelliJ, there's other types of people they have to
Right,
think
right.
about.
Yeah.
What about the skills? Like any challenges with skills distribution and management and governance? Across teams?
We do see, because we haven't moved. So we have a self-hosted GitHub,
Mhm.
the data center version. So in that, the distribution is not very good, because we can't have like enterprise agents or skills. So the only way to distribute is to create some inner source repositories where we ask people to
Yeah.
download and contribute. So that way we do have a lot of contribution there in a central place, but distribution is still a challenge. I would say like that's not a very straightforward distribution that we can do.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's a
Yeah.
challenge.
Seems like Git, there's another opportunity for Git here as far as a registry or something
Yeah.
to standardize alongside MCP, but we'll see. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know, that's kind of what I was interested in.
Mhm.
What else? I mean, are you enjoying the AI kind of shift in your career? Like,
Yeah.
what's your personal view?
Yeah, so I mean, so I've been a developer, architect, and in fact, around 5 years I was doing engineering management, and I came back to the solution architect role like last year, right? So, and it was right
Yeah.
at the time the AI is starting. I mean, I'm obviously all of us are blown away, right? I mean, and there is a moment in your life you will like last 6 months or 1 year. I think I can ask you also. Like for me, it was like around December, January time. I felt okay, this is there, right? I mean, this is not some sci-fi movie because it's real complex. So, but yes, I mean, it needs a lot of what you call value, etc. I am worried about the gradual decay of skills, cognitive abilities. Like, I sometimes think, I used to debug the JVM memory issues like 10 years back. Could anybody do it like after 10 years, right? I doubt, So my view is that it would have a huge impact, but we just don't know like kind of what would be the
Yeah.
impact. I don't know what is your view, which is interesting to know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I would say I'm aligned. I was, I'm still very skeptical, like culturally,
Mm.
socially. There's a lot of negatives to AI that concern
Yeah.
me, um,
Uh,
and then I'm like, I started a new startup last year, and I'm like, all right, I've got to understand this, so I've got to get in
mhm.
there and play and understand it fully, what's going on, and similar to you, like December, January, I'm like, oh wait, and once I went from ChatGPT or Claude Copilot into the IDE, into my folder structure, my Git structure, and started, working. Like, I mean, I've got 3 or 4 agents working as we've been talking, this whole time doing
Uh,
things for me. So it's like you start seeing, and then I'm an interface guy. So,
uh,
I'm thinking, okay, APIs, I'm like MCP doesn't impress me because it's just a
uh,
long-lived API, HTTP connection.
yes.
It's an API. It's not any different.
Right.
And then
Uh,
so the API to MCP to CLI, I've had plenty of CLI arguments over the years. It doesn't
uh,
impress me, but agents, the skills I find pretty compelling and
yes.
interesting. And
Uh,
then once you kind of combine that with MCP, you get some really interesting things. But what I'm really interested in walking is that deterministic and non-deterministic line. Like when my agents are running things, what percentage is running scripts and deterministically and using APIs and doing things, and then what part is the actual AI. And I think that's the formula or the important balance for me that I have to strike for me to keep my skepticism low and my concern levels low. But yeah.
uh, I think definitely the human in the loop is going to be like even more important, like more and more important, especially the company like Schneider, where this, we supply this industrial type of software, right? Because, there's long time back, I visited one of our office in Germany and the person was explaining the supply chain. So he was saying that we build the brains that goes into the machine, and then the machine is told to the OEM, and the OEM sells it to the company. They will be in some desert, or an oil plant. And imagine there is an issue in this device, right, where the actual brain is there. That think about the journey it has to travel to finally reach us. So that's why the software has to be treated like a hardware. Like, you can't like change, because that is not the traditional mindset we have. Like I was from a web development kind of background, so this is like firmware. So you can really see that, different layers where people work, their mindset is completely different to AI. Also, like obviously UI, it's really good, but as you move down the stack, as you move firmware, there are a lot of concerns for sure. And I think the human in the loop is going to be like even more important. So I think the skills is going to be, how do you quickly evaluate the AI results? AI evaluation is going to be really important. So things like that is going to be obviously a lot of new skills to learn for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm finding a way forward in it. I was like a little bit concerned career wise. I'm 54,
Mhm.
but been doing this 30 years. I'm like, what do I
Mhm.
want to do? What's my next? And I think walking that line between the legacy and what is and what's new,
Hmm.
and it never moves as fast as everyone likes it to think. Because
Yeah.
once you
Yeah.
start getting into mainstream industries, like you know, Schneider and others, it's like things don't move very fast, and they're not, and they have to be a little bit more reliable and stable, and it's not just the tech, like you said, it's the people. You know, you got to move the people
Yeah.
forward too, and that rarely moves as fast as we like. So I'm a little more confident that I got another 20, 30 years to you know keep at this. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is true. I mean, there is a definitely role is there, but I think we have to see the kind of, I tell people, okay, we have a lot of legacy software to upgrade, so 2 3 years there is no issues. Like we have to see, what happens after that. But you're
yeah.
right. I mean, there is a lot of instability in terms of what would bring in general to the knowledge work as it stands, and there is no, you know I mean, the amount of knowledge it can ingest, like, just to give an example, I had supplying for an expert program within the company, so I had to put some proof of my expertise, right? So what I did is I pointed it to my the performance reviews over the years, the document folder that I had, and I was asking some questions. Okay, pull me some example where I have shown this initiative, right? So it has given me, okay, 2022, this one, like this person has said this is about you, that I don't remember, but it is able to look at the PDF, which is a very custom format in the in the company, understand what it is, like what person told what. So it has that, and you can imagine this is a large file with like no text kind of PDF. So it's going to have a lot of impact. There is no denying it.